Hi everyone, this is Jeff, a chartered accountant with over 10 years of experience, and I have a passion for finance. This is my friend Zamo, a fellow qualified chartered accountant, and we thought we'd do something different today. We'll do something completely unscripted and spontaneous. So our plan is to go through our hats of various financial topics that we have very meticulously set out here. And we'll each get 1 minute to talk about the subject and just basically spew our brains and get as much out as we can out there. Hopefully, some of it lands and it can teach some people out there about personal finance, which is a big passion of ours. Anything you want to say?
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, just to let you know, we didn't prepare for this, and we also didn't prepare for the questions. We just quickly write down the questions. So it's just like being fun and see if we can help you guys. And then please comment down below if there's more topics you want us to address more in detail.
And as ever, please subscribe and like this video. It'll really help us out. Thanks. Now let's get into it. Shall I start first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I'll pick a random one out.
Good luck.
All right. I've got the stop clock here and go. Capital gains. Okay, so capital gains is when you have an asset and then you sell it for a profit. So you get tax on the profit effectively. However, you do get some allowances. I can't remember them off the top of my head. They always move around. But as an example, you own an investment property that you're renting out. You bought it for £100,000, but it's now worth £250,000. Therefore, if you were to sell it, you have a capital gain, i.e. a profit of £150,000, and that's the element that is taxable. However, there will be an element of that is tax-free, and then anything above that will be taxable. And I believe it's 24% now, but I might be mistaken. And you get capital gains as well on investments, so stocks and shares, anything that you have outside of an ISA. And that's a minute.
Yep.
You ready to go?
Well done, Jeff. Yeah, not sure if much to add, but maybe just to add as well, it also depends on the jurisdiction where you have your capital. So if, let's say, you've got fixed property in Spain, Italy, or in the UK, it will differ. So each country will have different schemes and rules and the tax rates. So when you've got property or investments, it depends which country those investments are. So I would say it's important when you do investments to look at the tax that you're going to pay with the capital gains tax, and then make sure that your investments are in countries that have got lower tax rates.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. It's not a bad start.
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Okay. Ready to go again?
All right, let's do another one. Let's see which one we're going to pick.
And go.
Stocks versus savings. Is that right?
Or stock. Yeah, so basically stocks versus savings.
Stock versus savings.
What's better to do?
It's easy. So in terms of savings, you're actually guaranteed you're never going to lose your money. So when you want to do a savings, so let's say you've got 1,000, either you put an initial big lump sum like 1,000, which you put it into fixed investments, and then they'll give an interest rate. They'll say maybe you're going to earn 5% per annum. So each year you're going to be earning that interest, and then at the end of the term, you actually can get back your interest plus your capital 1,000 that you deposited. So there's no risk of losing money. The disadvantage with savings is that the interest rate to your return is always going to be lower. So you can't expect to have a very high return. Whereas investments, you can actually lose all your money. So the advantage with investment, most of the time, the interest rate or the return is very high. So some investments, you can be earning 20% per annum. So it means like in 5 years' time, you actually will double up your investment. But at the same time, you could lose what you've invested. You can invest same amount, let's say 1,000, and at 20% rate in 5 years' time, it's going to be 2,000. Or you can invest 1,000 at the end of the year. Actually, 1,000 has become 800 to 600 because the investment of the shares have gone the wrong way. They've decreased instead of increasing.
1 minute 20. Not bad. Okay. And all right, I'll go now. So I'll just add to that investments are generally for long term. So you shouldn't be investing any money if you're trying to look for a quick buck. It doesn't work that easily. It's not going to happen really. So if you want to invest, you're thinking about a long term. at least 10 years, 20 years, that sort of time frame that you should be thinking about. If you're saving up for a deposit for a house, don't put that in investments if you're going to need it in 2-3 years time. Put that in an easy access savings account that's liquid. That means you can access it as soon as you need it. Whereas an investment, you don't want to be withdrawing on that money until you are ready for it. You don't want to be withdrawing when someone else is telling you that you need to withdraw from it, if that makes sense. So that's why investing is very important for a long-term point of view. You can really get your gains in from the compounding effect as well. No, do 50 seconds. Okay.
All right. The next one.
Let's see. What's this one? Foreign exchange fees and what's that word? Traveling. Okay. So most banks, I think, charge a foreign exchange fee of I think it's around 3%.
Yeah.
On transactions that are abroad. So, but you get some debit cards and other financial products where they don't charge that fee. So do shop around. I think it's Halifax do quite a good one. I think Chase do a good one as well, where you have 0 FX fees on your transactions spent abroad. However, the flip side to that, if you do want to gain points, like for example Avios, those cards would get you points abroad as well, but of course you'd be paying your 3% FX fee. So it depends on your priorities. Really, it depends on your budget. But it's just worth noting that as well. On top of that, I'll say just be careful as well with drawing cash abroad. If you abroad, never withdraw cash using a credit card anyway. But withdrawing cash using a debit card, just make sure you understand and you read what the screen is telling you for any fees that you might incur on your transaction.
So just to add on what Jeff has said, so I'll say for me as well, most of the time I use a credit card, which is American Express, and the reason why I use it is because I want to earn miles every dollar or every pound that I spend. So I actually don't get into these trying to have foreign exchange and exchange it, because for me, obviously are worth much more than the exchange rate that I'm going to be charged. But what I'll say, if you have to withdraw cash because there's an emergency or you need to exchange, go to a reputable bank in that country. Never use these exchange rate banks or ATM machines that you never know which bank it belongs to. So look for your HSBCs, look for whatever the local bank that is the big bank, whatever the fees that you're going to charge, you are going to be reasonable. And also banks now have come up with better ways. So for example, HSBC, you've got like a money market account where you can just immediately transfer funds to foreign exchange that you're going to be using. So if let's say you go to America, you can just transfer US dollars actually before you pay from your savings account or from your debit card account to this account. So you don't actually need to have foreign exchange, because sometimes you can lose interest on your savings account because you having dollars that you're not necessarily going to use. Okay.
Yep. 1 minute 30, but over there, but it's okay.
I need to cut down.
All right, it's your turn.
I know which one. I've got 2 spreadsheets.
Oh, my favorite subject.
Jeff's favorite subject. And when I first met Jeff, I think the first thing that he told me, he really loves his spreadsheets. So I think spreadsheets are a good way of seeing your finances or investments or your cash outflows, or if you want to do budgeting. It's an easy way and it's not going to change, and you're going to remember it. So you know how much you're spending per month, or if you're trying to invest or you're trying to save, you'll know what is going out and what is coming in. So it's easy to reconcile and also discipline yourself, because when you blend in your mind, it's so easy to convince yourself that no, you're not making a loss. But if you got it in your spreadsheet, you look at it at the end of the month, it's like, no, I need to be in the positive now, I'm in the right. So it's really good way of managing your finances.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, I'll just add to that to say that spreadsheets are a great way of tracking anything relating to finances. Well, for me personally, I track my personal finances, I track my investments, savings, I track how much I spend on holiday, pensions, everything, you name it, you can track on the spreadsheet. A few shortcuts for you out there. Control D repeats the cell from above into the cell below. Control open square bracket follows your cell to the cell that it's linked to in the Formula 1. That's my favorite one. Maybe Control S for you beginners out there. That saves your document. Control C, Control V, copy and paste, of course. So just a few quick tidbits there. I'll definitely try and make a proper video one of these days on my Excel spreadsheets and shortcuts.
Yeah. All done.
All right, that's good.
Makes sense.
Let's continue on.
Good luck.
All right. Credit cards. Yes. So credit cards, you should only ever have credit cards if you have the discipline to pay off every single month in full. You should not be getting a credit card if you can't afford to pay off. This leads to very bad behaviors where credit card debt just racks up, and then you open more credit cards, and then it just becomes a snowball effect of your debt really increasing and your interest compounding as well. So that's my first caveat in terms of credit cards. But the flip side is they can be helpful in the sense of if you know you're going to be disciplined, you can use Avios credit cards such as the American Express, British Airways, or the Barclaycard Avios, both of which earn you Avios points, which you can then redeem towards your flights, or you can redeem them towards your grocery spends and many other things besides that. But I do want to hammer home, do not take out a credit card if you know you're not going to be able to pay it off and you know that you don't have the discipline not to spend the money. Only spend it if you know that you have the money already in your account and you can pay it off at the end of the month.
Okay. Well,
Okay, say over. That's great.
not bad, not bad. Yeah, just to add what Jeff is saying, credit cards are a very expensive way of debt to get into. So the interest rates on average are close to 30%. So imagine if you spend something because it's an emergency, you spend 1,000, and the end of the year you actually now only want 1,300. So it's very expensive. So if you've got any emergency spend that you need to have, you rather go to a bank and ask for a loan. Then interest rates could be anywhere between 5% and 10% at most, so depending on your credit rating. So if you've got any emergencies, never use credit cards for emergencies. Rather go to a bank and get it all.
And what's better to save up for an emergency fund as well. So 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses, save that up. Then you can cover any big emergencies that can come up.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Good one. Mortgages.
Ooh.
Mortgages, that's an interesting part. I guess mortgages is what you pay for, or when you lend money because you want to buy a house. So very few of us have got rich parents, or we come from rich families where if you want a house, they can give you cash to buy a house. So let's say in the UK you want to buy a 1-bedroom house, it's probably going to cost you 500,000. I'm sure very few people have got 500,000 lying waiting. So then you'll go to a bank to get a mortgage, and then so that's the finance. You're actually not going to be owning that property yourself until you've repaid the full mortgage. So if you get 500, normally it could be 20 or 30 years depending on your age, and you're working 20 to 30 years to pay the interest and the mortgage back. And then after 20 or 30 years, then that house would belong fully to you. So it's important to make sure you prioritize your mortgages, because if you default and you don't make any payments after, let's say, 10 years, they might repossess your property, which means all the money that you spend, you've lost.
Yeah, very good. Perfect. I'll add to that in terms of mortgages, you've got many different types of mortgages. So you've got your fixed mortgages where your interest rate will be fixed between 2 years to 5 years, or even longer than that. You have variable mortgages where it depends on the Bank of England base rate, and it will just flex up and down. You have tracker mortgages as well, which do something similar, but they all have different fees as well. So some of them can cost up to £1,500 just to arrange for the fee, which is very expensive. So bear that in mind if you're saving up for a deposit. You need to have all these other funds in mind as well when you take out a mortgage, and the mortgage provider as well. I'll recommend a mortgage broker. So there are many mortgage brokers out there that can help you. A lot of them are completely free as well, because they get the commission from the lender, but they can give you so much advice on what to look out for to get the best mortgage and to pay the least amount as possible based on your individual circumstances. My turn?
Yep.
Okay. Starting a business. Well, I've not started a business myself, so I can really talk a limited amount on this. But starting a business, being entrepreneur is a great, fantastic way to make a lot of money in the short term sometimes. However, that's not without its risks, of course. But if you're really passionate about something, you you found a gap in the market that you think you can exploit, or you have expertise that you don't think is being utilized, by all means, you can set up a side hustle. You can set up something on Etsy or something like that. Set up a YouTube channel, for example. There's so many different ways of starting a business. So it's a good way of creating more money rather than just relying on your paycheck day to day.
Good. Well done. Less than a minute. So starting business is actually one passion of mine. I've actually started businesses, and I've also helped people and advised them when they wanted to start businesses. So what I'll say, if you want to start a business, you'll have a good idea that you want to do. But what is important, get someone that is an accountant or someone that knows or how to deal with finances and who's going to give you advice. Because when I've helped people with starting a business, you actually help them to direct to say, is your product going to be profitable, or how to get investors? Because most of us, we don't have the money to start a business, and there are different ways that you can get funding. You can get funding from the bank, you can get private investors that are going to help you with the business, and you need to develop a business plan. So a financial person or a financial accountant, someone that has experience in finance, might be able to advise in terms of how to develop a business, and also how to go to get funding or investors for the business that you want to start. So it is a good way, very risky, very challenging, but yeah, get as much advice as possible.
Yeah.
My turn.
Yeah, it's your turn. Yeah.
Investing. So I guess investing, the advantage with investing is that you want to build capital, not only just for you and also for your kids, And so, we all working, you earning a salary. So if you invest, this is where now you want your money to grow more than what you would if you're just spending whatever you're earning. So as you said, you can invest in property, you can invest in shares, which is very risky. But if, let's say, you get a bonus, you know, let's say 5,000, you take 500 to 1,000, you put it in an investment, you're taking a risk. You say, I'm okay. If I lose the 1,000, it's okay. But your 1,000 can turn up to be 20,000 in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time. So, and that actually could be a good way of starting to invest. So I'll say, start with your savings. The moment that you've got something that is significant, maybe you've gone to 5,000 from your savings, then maybe you can want to invest on something that is going to give you more. Remember that you still got your pension, never touch your pension. So investment is more on top of whatever you have as in your savings and your pension.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, so in terms of investing, having a pension is kind of investing as well, because your pension fund would generally invest into the various assets as well. I'll certainly say diversification is extremely important when it comes to investing. You don't want to be just buying one stock of Apple and that's it. You want to be buying lots of stocks across a broad range of markets. What people tend to do, what I do, I invest into exchange traded funds or ETFs, where they effectively have a whole basket of investments that they invest into companies, but it just tracks an index. So for example, you have the S&P 500 in the US, where you have ETFs which have bought shares in each of the 500 individual companies, and the stock value of that ETF will simply just go up and down depending on how the S&P 500 is performing. Over the past 100 years or so, the S&P has averaged a return of 10%, excluding inflation. So it's a great way of just setting your money aside for the long term, just forgetting about it, and you're pretty much guaranteed to make a good return if you just keep it in there, keep investing consistently. Is it my turn or your turn? My turn, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. Inheritance tax. Okay, so inheritance tax in the UK, you can save up to 1 million in total if you have a property included in your estate. Otherwise, it's £375,000 each. In terms of inheritance tax, there are many different rules of what is taxable and what is deemed as part of your estate. Generally, anything over £1 million would be taxable at a rate of 40% as things stand. You can, however, gift cash and assets to your friends and family. You have an annual gift allowance of £3,000 that you can utilize, which you can roll back 1 year as well if you've not utilized. So there are many different rules that are part of inheritance tax that you can utilize. The majority of people don't pay inheritance tax just due to that £1 million threshold being quite high, but you never know, if if the threshold doesn't change for another 10, 20 years, then inflation will erode that effect, and more people will end up paying inheritance tax.
Yep.
Yep.
Well done.
Okay.
Just to add on that as well, inheritance tax, it's what most countries now have started to add more and increasing. I think before, like when I talked to my parents, they never used to pay inheritance tax. So it's important as well, especially if you know you're going to be above the threshold, because let's say if you've got 5 million that you want to pass on to your kids, you don't want the government taking 40% or 20% of that money. So you also, it's important to get tax advisors that can advise you, because there's also schemes that you can do in order to reduce the tax that you're going to pay effectively. For example, by creating a trust, and then depending how you're going to be distributing that inheritance that you have, and also depending on the type of properties or investments that you're going to be distributing to your future generation. So it's important, if you're going to be above the threshold, to get tax advices so that you can save as much as you can on the tax.
Yeah, very good. I just want to add as well, I think I said £375,000 each, but it's actually £325,000 each, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then in total, if you have a property as well, it's £500,000 each, hence the £1 million if you're a couple.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well done. Nice. Okay, let's go to this one. Pensions. Wow.
Okay.
Pensions is a very interesting one. So pensions, I think in some countries, especially in the first world, like in the UK, it's mandatory that if you are working, that you must have pensions. But I know in some countries, especially some of my friends that have got Chinese companies, that they might not be having pensions. So I'll say pension is something that is very important to have, because when you are at the age of 6 to 65, depending on the country, when you retire, you need to be able to earn something, because, or have an investment that you're going to be getting at the end of the period. And it's also important to make sure that you don't touch your pension, because sometimes certain countries you are able to withdraw from your pension. The problem that if you withdraw to pay for emergency funds or to settle your debt, when you retire, you don't have any money, and you don't want to be working until you're 90 years old, So it's important to have a pension. And as Jeff has mentioned in other videos as well, as you increase your salary, also increase the percentage that you're paying towards your pension. Sometimes when you get a bonus, that bonus as well, instead of spending it, maybe 50% of it, you can put it towards your pension. Over a long term, it's going to be a great investment.
Yeah, completely agreed. Completely agreed. I'll add to that as well. In the UK, everyone would get a workplace pension unless you opt out. But really, you shouldn't be opting out. It's free money at the end of the day that your employer is also contributing towards too. And on top of that, you should be maxing that out. So let's say your employer contributes 10% or up to 10% of what you contribute. What's the point of putting in 3%? Just contribute the full 10%, and your employer will contribute 10% as well, and you have a 20% tax-free input into your pension, which is, it's just free money. So just don't leave free money on the table, right? Whatever you do. Second thing that's very important as well, if you're in a defined contribution plan, just make sure you check what exactly your pension company is investing into, because there are so many different types of plans out there, and they'll just invest on your behalf through a default strategy. Your retirement plans might be completely different to what the pension plan is trying to do. So make sure you call them up, do the research in terms of what exactly is their strategy for investing, because they might be putting out your investments and putting it into less risky funds later in your life, but maybe you don't need, you're relatively comfortable, you can afford to keep that into the higher risk investments or something like that. So make sure you check with your pension provider.
And just to add as well, pensions, because when you do pensions contribution, you actually get tax deductions. So you actually get a benefit. So the more you put on your pensions, you actually could be saving on the tax that you are paying every month. So the more money you put on the pension, you actually get a doubling effect, where you actually end up investing more than if you were to do another normal investment. So pensions, yeah, it's a very good way of increasing your investment.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. It's going well. It's going well.
Yeah. Okay. Credit cards versus debit cards. So debit cards are basically your current account, where you pay something using your debit card. It will come straight out your current account. So if you don't have any money in your current account, you won't be able to pay for it unless you have an overdraft. Credit cards, on the other hand, regardless of what you have in your current account, you will be set a credit limit. For example, £10,000, £50,000, whatever that is. So you can put up to that amount onto your credit card, and only up to that amount, and then you cannot put any more to that card. However, you obviously still have to pay off that card, and as Sambo said, there are very, very high interest rates, up to 30% sometimes. So you want to make sure that you can pay off those credit cards in on time and in full, so that you're not paying any interest. Otherwise, you can really get into a bad situation where you're paying down your interest as well as trying to pay off your credit cards. So if you, as I said, if you don't think you'll be able to do that behavior, just stick to your debit card, get your money in from your paycheck every month, see the money coming in, and then pay as you go throughout the month on your debit card. But try and put some into your savings as well as you can before then.
100% agree with Jeff. So if you're not going to be disciplined, never use a credit card. So for me personally, the main reason why I use a credit card is because I want to get the avios. So, and at the end of the month, I make sure that I settle whatever I spend on the month, and from my debit card. So I actually had to use my debit card. I actually only use my debit card if I need to withdraw cash. The other advantage as well of using a credit card is that as a consumer, you're more protected. So let's say if I were to buy something, let's say I buy something online, and then it never get delivered to me because maybe that whatever that site I was in was a scam, whatever. With a credit card, you're always covered. The bank would be actually able, you're not liable to pay for that expense because it's a scam. But normally, if it's a debit card, you don't have much protection as compared to a credit card. So that is why, for example, if you do online purchases, most of the time for me, it is safe to use a credit card than a debit card.
Yeah, 100%. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think it's your turn now.
It's my turn. Okay, let's take the big one. Estate planning. Wow. Estate planning, I think for me, estate planning, I would say it's more where you're trying to plan for your future and also the future of your children and or for the next generation. So this is where you can say it's part of your investment, say, okay, what investment do I have? What shares do I have? You need to diversify. So you might buy property. Maybe you have two houses in two different countries. You might have shares that you have, and then you might also have like some savings or some fixed term investments. So estate planning is now looking in the future to say, okay, do I have enough assets and investments to cover for my future in terms of my retirement and also money that I'm gonna pass for my kids and also for the schooling of my kids. Maybe you want to make sure when your kids start to go to university, they've got an apartment that they don't need to pay for because you've already bought. So as part of estate planning, it's going to be all of this where you're trying to plan your assets and your investments and your future in terms of finances and to have financial freedom.
Yeah, really good. Completely agree. And on the same subject, it's also slightly related to inheritance tax as well, where you plan your estate basically. So you need to plan to try to minimize the amount of inheritance tax that you need to pay. So you might be giving away gifts, you might be contributing into your pension or something like that, so that it minimizes your estate. As well as that, as I said, diversifying as well is important, so that in the event you get into your old age and retirement and you're relying on one source of income, you're not linked into that one source of income. You want to have a diverse range of assets that you can count on to provide your income in later years. And so I've got properties now. So in regards to property, we covered off mortgages as well, but maybe let's cover off non-mortgage related things. So when you're looking at buying a property for the first time, don't forget about all the other costs that are involved as well. You need to think about stamp duty. So if you're a first time buyer, depending on how expensive the property is, you might be liable to pay stamp duty. If it's not your first time, if it's not the first time you bought a property, you'll certainly almost have to pay stamp duty on that. Depending on the value of the property. So bear that in mind. Bear in mind your mortgage broker. You might have cost of that. You'll need building insurance for your house. You need to pay a mortgage arrangement fee. You need to pay for solicitors as well. And as you can see, there's so many different costs to think about. And I guess even more importantly, you have to think about the costs that come after. So the mortgage itself. So make sure that you can actually afford that mortgage. Just because you can borrow X amount of money doesn't mean you should, because that means your monthly outgoings will be higher. So just please bear that in mind as well.
Yep. properties, I like property investment in a sense that at least you've got an asset that normally you're not gonna lose, So as you generating, once you've paid the mortgages, at least then you have an asset that you fully own. Then you can decide if you want to rent it out, in future. And then as you grow, you can end up having more than one properties and also in different countries. So it's a good way as well of investing and also having capital appreciation. I've got some people as well that will buy property in order to rent it out then as an investment. But of course, if you're going to do that, it's similar to starting a business. Get advice, make sure that the cash outflow and inflow is going to make sense, because sometimes you don't want to be out of cash where you go and buy the property and then the returns that you're getting through rental is actually not worth much. You could have invested your money somewhere else to get more. But it's easy if you are using the property, at least after 20 to 30 years, you've got a property that is fully paid and that you own.
Yeah, completely agreed. Very good.
Nice. Next one is income tax.
Oh,
Ooh,
very good one.
wow. Income tax. Income tax, I guess this is if you work and you've got an employer, this is a tax that you have to pay and you don't have a choice because your employer will deduct for the government from your salary. So let's say if the tax rate is 30%, you earn 50,000, you take 30%, you've got 15.
You can earn 12,570 tax free
That's right. Yeah.
before you start paying
Before you
income
start paying
tax.
the income tax. So it's a way that the government is taxing people, and there's not much room that you've actually got to play with. The other way as well, if you've got other businesses or other income and other contribution, for example, you could be doing donations to charities and stuff like that. Your employer will not have that information. So in that way, it's important to do a voluntary annual income tax return, which you fill, and then you can also show the other expenses, for example, contribution or donations to charities, and then they deduct, and then you might get a refund from the government.
Yeah, but most of the time, if your sole source of income is from your employment, then generally you wouldn't have to fill in a tax return in most cases. But do your own research, please, on that. On top of income tax, so I was just going to say, you have your normal rate, your basic rate band of 20% income tax for most people within the UK, and then you have the 40% threshold and the 45% threshold. But I just want to make it clear that when you go between the 20% to the 40% threshold, I can't remember what it was. It's like 40,000 or 50,000
Yeah,
pounds or something, some around that level. You don't go up into the 40% threshold and then pay everything on 40%. That's very important to understand. So you should never be turning down a raise or a promotion from work because you think you're suddenly going to jump into the 40% band and paid 40% on everything.
Yeah.
No, that's not right. You pay 20% on 12,570 pounds of earnings up until that threshold of 40 to 50,000 pounds. I can't remember which. And then from that level, is anything above that threshold is where you get taxed at 40%. So please, whatever you do, don't turn down a promotion or a raise at work because you're worried about getting everything taxed at 40%.
Yeah.
Childcare assistance. Yes. So the government provides various childcare assistances if you live in the UK, depending on whether if you're England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. But generally, there are means tested. So within a certain threshold of income, you'll be getting some free childcare as from the government that will help you out and will certainly save you quite a lot of money. You get child tax benefits as well. And you finally in yours to get a tax-free childcare benefit allowance as well. But do your own research on that. There's a lot of help out there that the government does provide. Again, it's means tested. So I think if you earn above £100,000, then you're not applicable to get these reliefs. But do your research on that. There's plenty of help out there that the government does provide.
No, 100%. Not sure I can add more, but yeah, it's important, especially when you do family planning, do your research, because there's a lot of ways that governments are actually assisting families and parents. So you don't want to be spending money where the government actually would be spending money on your behalf. So do your research depending on the country that we live in, and yeah, use those incentives.
Yeah, that's exactly. And don't lose out on those benefits because you weren't aware. Just do your research and claim what you deserve.
Okay. Current account switching, is it?
Yeah, switching. So that's switching current accounts for the switching bonuses.
Switching bonuses. I haven't explained that. You go first. I haven't expressed it.
So current account switching is where various banks in the UK offer promotions to switch to their bank account. So, as an example, if you're currently with HSBC, I don't know, NatWest might provide a promotion that if you switch using the current account switching service, where they guarantee that your account will move within 7 days from HSBC to NatWest, for example, NatWest will give you, say, £150 just like that, just in cash and straight into your new account, just for switching from HSBC or whichever bank account to their bank. So there's various promotions that's run throughout every year. Just one caveat is that if one bank is owned by another bank or as part of a group, then you can only get that switching bonus from one of those banks, and that's it. So I can't remember. So so HSBC and First Direct is a good example. So if you got a switching bonus on First Direct, you can't go and switch to HSBC and get their switching bonus because they're part of the same group.
Yep. Oh, that's interesting. See, you always learn. I'm sure after something I've never knew about the bonus for switching debit accounts. For example, for me, since I've been here, I've been using the same bank. I haven't switched. I do know about switching when it comes to credit cards. So it actually is also a good way if you need to circle your credit card. So sometimes banks will run promotions. So let's say you've got a credit card balance of 5,000, and banks will say, if you take our credit card and you circle that other credit card, you pay 3% as a fee. So if you take 5,000%, 3% as a fee, it's actually very minimal. That's a good way of settling your credit card debt. And then they can give you that you have to pay it over 24 months as an example, but you're not going to be paying interest during those 24 months. So this is actually a good way of reducing your credit debt. Yeah, but I didn't know about debit card.
That's got a 0% balance transfer.
Okay.
I think
That's right.
that's
Yeah,
better
called
card.
debit.
Yeah.
If I
Just coming back to the current account switching as well. So if you're like Zam, we've been with the same current account for decades and years and years and years, but you don't get any benefits from it, have a thing. Why are you staying? Can you look at other current accounts that A, give you a switching bonus, and B, some of them offer cash back, like the Chase debit card. Some of them will offer 0% fees abroad. So if you've been with a bank account for a long time and they don't give you any benefits, why stay? They're not giving you anything for your loyalty at the end of the day.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, good one, Trey. We're always learning.
Yeah.
We're here to learn.
I think we're on the last one. Yeah, that's the last one. Oh yeah, I'll go. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
ISAs are one of my favorite subjects. So ISA stands for individual savings accounts. You can have up to £20,000 saved in each year in the UK into these accounts. Nowadays you can have as many open as you like, split between stocks, shares, lifetime investment ISAs or LISAs, and you just need to make sure that within all your types of ISAs, you only put a maximum of £20,000 in there. If you withdraw money in a particular year, you cannot put that money back if you really reached that threshold. So just bear that in mind. And in terms of ISA cash savings accounts, if you want to open a new ISA savings account which has a better interest rate, whatever you do not take out your money from your existing cash ISA and deposit back into your new one, because that will mean you've lost out on your allowance. When you set up your new account, you elect to transfer the ISA from your old one into your new account so that you don't use up your allowance.
Yeah, nothing much to add. As Jeff is saying, as part of the investment, as you're building your estate and your investment, it's important to use that threshold. For example, the 20,000. So if you've got money that you're investing, I would say first use through the ISA account, because what means is you're not paying in any tax on whatever the interest or the dividends that you're going to earn from that account. So you're saving tax. If you're saving tax, it means more money that you can invest for future investment. So make sure that you use the benefits of those ISA accounts, and then do your research as well to find the different products that you can get under the ISA accounts.
Yep. So all your interest that you earn, any capital gains, any dividends, none of that is taxable if you're in a cash ISA or stocks and shares ISA. So it's a great thing to have in the UK, and definitely to use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was fun.
That was fun. Yeah, we did. We really enjoyed it. The time flew by, didn't it? So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. It was something different that we thought we'd try out. If you enjoyed it, do let us know, and we'll try and do some more in the future.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.